Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Wrestling Nostalgia. I'm your host, Dave Dynasty. This is a special episode that I have put together that I wanted to do to pay tribute and to remember Steve JT Branam. For anybody who has who has ever gone to an Indiana independent wrestling show in the past, I don't even know, 30 to 40 years probably. You probably know Steve Branam. He has been involved in every aspect of this business in Indiana for decades. He loved wrestling. He was always there, always at shows. Whether he was helping, whether he was working them, whether he was just hanging out. He's always there. And it was always great when you walked in a show and saw Steve, because Steve would always greet you. He'd always give you that big smile. He'd always give you a big hug. He'd always take the time to talk to you and to truly listen, right? He wasn't one of those guys that would ask, "Hey, how you doing?" and just, not really pay attention to your response. He would really listen. And whether you saw Steve 3 or 4 times a week, or whether you saw him once every 2 or 3 years, it was always like meeting your best friend again. Steve was such a fun, energetic, positive person to be around. And I know, we say that about a lot of people, right? You always say how much of a positive influence they had and all this. Man, it is absolutely 100% true with Steve Branam. I don't know anybody who ever disliked Steve. I don't know anybody who ever had a bad thing to say about Steve. I don't know why they would. Steve would tell you what he thought, right? He wasn't afraid, to talk to you, to give you his opinion, to give you his thoughts. But he did so in a caring way, right? It was not I'm telling you this because you're wrong. It was, I'm telling you this because I want you to be better. He didn't do it for anything for himself. He did it to help you and to push you and to inspire you. And man, Steve was good at that. I don't even know the first time I ever met Steve. I really don't. I don't remember it because, like I said, he just was always there. When I started attending shows in Indiana, it seemed like he was always around. And, I'm sure we spoke at some point or another there because I was an inquisitive dude who wanted to know more about this business and be involved. And I'm sure at some point we talked, right? When I started managing, when I started wrestling, when I started promoting shows, I definitely interacted with him a ton because no matter where it was in Indiana that I was, it seemed like Steve was there. When I started promoting my own shows in the late 90s, early 2000s, around that time period, whatever the years were. I don't recall off the top of my head. But anyway, when I first started promoting my own shows, I had a handful of guys that I wanted to use as my core group. And Steve Branam, or JT Branam, as he has been known professionally, was part of that. I knew I wanted Steve Branam to be my my heel manager. I wanted him to be my guy that all the heels centered around, right? He would manage the big group of heels, the core group of heels, the top level heels. And that's what he did for me. And I knew that when I first started thinking about running shows that I wanted him there and I wanted him to be a part. There was just no question. He was among that first group of talent that I wanted. And, and he was always so much fun to work with. And, he was always there early. He would always come and help set up chairs and help set up the ring or help whatever. And he always stayed late and helped clean it up and tear it down. And he never did it, for anything for himself. He just wanted to be there, wanted to be involved, wanted to help, wanted to be around, wanted to be around you, wanted to talk to you. And, I never really traveled with Steve, or anything. It was just always at shows, right? Sitting in locker rooms, with him, laughing and joking and cutting up and working with him on shows and working with him on shows I promoted. And he's made a couple little spot appearances on the podcast, right, and some different things. Never did a full interview with him, unfortunately, and I really regret that. Obviously now, he was always on the list and always one of those guys, that I thought I'd get to, and I knew he had gotten sick, and I just thought, well, I'm not going to say anything or impose now, and I wish I wish the timing had been right, where I would have got to, but he was. I mean, I worked and ran some shows that had just a handful of people at them, and Steve was out there giving it everything he had because he loved it. And if there was one person in that crowd, man, he was going to get a reaction from that one person, and he was going to work that show for that one person if need be. And he gave you everything he did. If there was hundreds of people there, it was same. And he was, I remember driving to Indianapolis and meeting up with him. And borrowing wrestling videos because he would have something that had some Dick the Bruiser TV or Dick the Bruiser match or something that I didn't have or hadn't seen. And Steve had it. So, hey, come on up. And we'd meet up and he'd loan me his tapes and, or make me copies or give them to me or whatever it might be. And, is always glad to help out with that kind of stuff. And was just, oh man, it just, it always sucks to lose someone in the wrestling community. Man, but when you lose somebody that was such a huge positive influence on so many people for so long a time, anybody who passed through the Indiana independent wrestling scene, and like I said, the last 30 or 40 years has probably encountered Steve Branam. And, I mean, this goes all the way up to guys who are now performing on national worldwide TV, to guys that once did, guys that had developmental deals, whatever. I mean, at some point in their process, they probably encountered Steve, and this one, like I said, it always sucks to lose somebody, but man, this one hurts deep. It really, really does. And I've got some people on who would like to share some memories of Steve and tell some stories of Steve. And I do appreciate that because that's what it's about, right? That's what that's what us in wrestling, what we like to do, man. We like to tell stories, right? We like to sit around and reminisce. And I mean, that's the whole premise of these podcasts, is reminiscing and remembering and telling stories and talking. It's part of it. And so I had there's some people that came on to do that and sent me clips and everything. Because this did come together very quickly, right? There was no way I could sit down and call and talk to all these people. So they recorded themselves and sent them clips because so many people wanted to be a part. And I've got a handful on here, and we're gonna play those clips right now. Dan Garza.
Hi, my name is Diamond Dan Garza, and I was asked to get on here and share some stories and some memories of Steve Branam, known around wrestling here in Indiana as JT Branam, but better known to us involved in wrestling here as Uncle Steve. I met Uncle Steve probably close to 30 years ago, going to shows. He'd go and help out different promotions. And, at one point, I brought his son Matt to train with me and Jason Free. And whether it's out in the Red Barn or at Gold's Gym, where we were at, he'd come out. And then he was getting involved, helping out promotions behind the scenes. He'd do whatever it would be, help set up the ring, tear down, whatever it took. And there's probably not a promotion in Indiana that Steve hasn't either been, a commissioner for or a president for, some sort of figurehead out there, during the shows, keeping things moving. I mean, he just wanted to be involved in wrestling. I mean, like most of us that older that grew up in Indiana involved in wrestling, loved Dick the Bruiser and his promotion. And I think that's where his love came from. And, just wanted to be involved in wrestling. And when he could, that's what happened. Like I say, there's so many promotions that he's been involved with and helped out. And he's not the one that would worry about the behind the scenes type stuff as far as politics and so forth. He was just there to help. I mean, he wasn't there looking to make a huge payday. Most of the times he volunteered his time at some of these promotions helping out. But you're probably not going to find a person in the area here that would have a bad word to say about Steve, because he wasn't that kind of person. He was there to help. He was there to make the promotion better, do what he could, just to be involved in wrestling. Like I say, he had that love for it so much. So, I mean, there's really not just one story that sticks out, because Steve helped me out so much, in some of the shows that I ran. And like I say, I know he helped out a ton of other promotions in the area here, and, deserves all the, praise that he's going to get here today on this podcast. And, in future, his name should be brought up. There should be shows named after him. He's just that type of guy that, not only, like I say, his love of wrestling, but people that loved him in wrestling, and the fans that went to the show, whether he was the good guy, the bad guy, whatever it was, as far as the figurehead, he did a great job. And I just want to send my condolences out to Matt and Steve's family at this time. I mean, it's tough. I ran into Steve on the south side. We both lived near the south side of Indianapolis, and I hadn't seen him in a long time. And I ran into him. I was so happy to see him. Took a picture with him, which, not everybody takes a picture every time they see somebody, but just something made me want to take a picture with Steve and post it online to show that, he was still around and out and about. But, unfortunately, one of the last times that I did see Steve, so, just kind of, it hurts, for somebody that was so kind to everyone, to pass away, and just, hadn't been out to some of the shows lately. So, once again, my condolences out to his family. Hopefully there'll be a ceremony of life that'll be announced soon, that we can all go and share some more stories about Steve and speak of the great things that he done within wrestling.
Marcus Fine.
Hello, I'm Marcus Fine, and I was asked to do a little thing for JT Branam. So, first off, I have to say that JT will be remembered as a friend to just about anybody he ever met. I mean, JT was always willing to help and was always there for anyone who needed him, whether it be for advice or whatever. JT was always a guy you could count on. The thing I remember most about JT is he's one of the first guys that let me inside the inner workings of professional wrestling. We had several hours of discussions through PMs. If he was at a show he wasn't working, we would sit down and talk about a lot of things during the shows. He was always made sure to make contact with me if he knew I was in the building. He always wanted me at his shows. JT was a good man, and I will never forget him. He will be dearly missed by everyone who knew the man. JT, love you, brother. God bless, and till we meet again.
Chris Caliber.
Hi, everybody. This is Andrew Brown. This is Chris Caliber on the Indiana independent wrestling scene. I was asked to send in an audio clip to discuss my favorite memories with Steve Branam, but I can't give you one favorite memory. Steve was everywhere on the Indiana independent scene. He was there in North Vernon when I started. He was in Madison. He was in Indianapolis. He was up in Marion. And he was back down in Columbus with Emerge Wrestling for a while. The best thing about Steve was whenever you would see him, he'd always give you that big dad hug, and he'd tell you exactly how he felt about you every single time, and he would always pump you up to be the best version of you that you could be. He was one of the people that believed in me from the very beginning, seeing me for the first time against the Bouncer down in Madison, Indiana for Eric Draven's company, SCW. And again in Emerge when we ran into each other 20 years later, he was still the same way. Pumping me up, pushing me to be the best I can be, was super happy to see me, always a big smile, always a big hug. Steve, you're going to be missed, buddy. You were one of the good guys in this business, and we definitely miss you a lot.
Sign guy.
JT Branam was one of the most well-respected, most liked individuals in all of Indiana professional wrestling. I got to work with him many times on a variety of different things. He was a guest on Turnbuckle Turmoil multiple times. One of my favorite stories is one that JT used to tell us. He worked for a promotion that used Even Colder, who was a knockoff of Stone Cold Steve Austin. JT was the commissioner of the promotion, and somehow the World Wrestling Federation got a hold of JT's address and sent him a cease and desist letter informing him that he was in violation of copyrights for Stone Cold Steve Austin, even though clearly JT was not the owner of the company, but was just a figurehead commissioner. JT wrote a letter back saying he understood and no longer would they use Even Colder on their shows. There was no problem. They were happy to oblige. And he would always wrap up the story when he told it with, "And I still have the letter in my desk drawer today." He loved that story, loved the fact that WWF contacted him with a cease and desist, thinking he was actually the owner of the company. But we will definitely all miss JT, and hopefully we'll see him down the road.
Cameron Starr.
I was fortunate enough to get to know him pretty well in the early part of my career. We traveled together, we were on shows together, we worked together. So we spent a lot of time in the same circles. You have to keep in mind, when we traveled back then, this was the dark ages where GPS wasn't advanced and we had to print out MapQuest directions like pirates. And he always had this uncanny ability to take the wrong turn at least once. And in true, I'm the most positive guy in the room fashion, he would always say, "I'm just trying to show you the park." To this day, if we're just driving around and my husband makes a wrong turn, he just says, "I'm just trying to show you the park." But that's the kind of guy JT was, right? Like, always a positive out of a negative. Always frown upside down, right? That's probably the thing pro wrestling as a whole will miss the most.
Greg Carey.
I first met Steve Branam, it's got to be 30 years ago or close to it. I was dating a girl. I was fresh out of high school, and she was in a Firefighters Explorer program that Steve's son Matt was involved in. Somehow we got to talking about wrestling. A couple years passed, the girl and I had broken up, and I start going to Circle City Wrestling. I go for a summer where I'm taking my younger cousins with me, and then I start going alone because I believe they ran on Wednesday nights. And I started staying after and helping tear down. Now, I did not feel that the ring was something I dared touch, but I folded chairs and stacked them. I swept the floor, whatever, anything to help. And that's kind of how I started really talking to Steve more, and then Bob and Mike Samples. You know, the people who weren't afraid to talk to just a fan and worry about kayfabe. Go down the line a little farther after Circle City Wrestling had closed, and then CCW 2000 opened. And by then I had met Kelly Tabor, and we were friends. And I started hanging out with her and eventually introduced her to Steve and Bob and everybody involved there. It was a truly great time. One time, Steve, Bob, Kindred, Kelly, and I all went for Halloween to IWA Mid-South. Now, I dressed up as Banjo Boy, a character I had come up with, and we don't need to go farther into that. Kelly dressed up, I believe, as a devil. Bob wore a Rastafarian wig that I had. And then Steve dressed in a dress and called himself I'm a Rizat, which was fun. And we just, in the middle of IWA Mid-South, and this was back in the days when CM Punk, Colt Cabana, Chris Hero, Corporal Robinson, Mark Wolf, Bull Payne, all these great guys were there all the time, every week. Ace Steel, Danny Dominion, BJ Whitmer. I mean, it was a really amazing time to be there. And this was about the time I was really dipping my foot in, training, and just getting involved in wrestling. This is pre-IPW. And it was just, these were some of the best times of my life. Steve was a mentor and a friend. He encouraged me to continue on with wrestling, even though I'm not an athlete. I realized I was never going to be anything in the ring, but I could talk. I have a natural ability to get people not to like me when they first meet me. And it worked really well to be a manager. And Steve encouraged that. And I'm forever grateful for that. I'm going to miss my friend. This is Greg Carey.
All right. And now I'm being joined by Steve Branham's son, Matt. Matt, thank you for taking the time and joining me.
No problem.
Obviously, first of all, condolences to you and your family on losing your dad. We could all talk about it, right? We lost, a friend, but you lost your father. That's a whole different level.
Yeah.
And but talk to us a little bit. Just talk to us a little bit about Steve. How did Steve get started in the wrestling business? I mean, I'm assuming he grew up a fan, but what made him, start helping out and start becoming involved?
Well, we started going to local shows here in Indiana. Actually, believe it or not, it was around 1990 at Tyndall Armory, and that was around the time we started noticing there were local shows here. And we started going for the first few years, and then around 93 or 4, the guy that was running shows downtown decided they were going to move from there to Southfield Armory. And look, a couple years after that, he decided he was going to stop running shows as that promotion. And then Dad and I started helping out. I showed with security. And then the very first show there, he was doing like a spotlight up on a scaffold. And we kind of went from there. And then later on, I moved from there to the building over on Meridian Street, which was owned by, and a lot of people may not remember this guy, but he was a big downtown. He was known as Mr. Green, the Popcorn King. And we started going there, and then they wanted to find out a name they'd come up with. And I remember Dad and a couple others saying, well, we're in the Circle City. Why not call it Circle City Wrestling? And that Circle City Wrestling was born. Dad was an announcer. He also helped do sound. And he also helped sell food. I was security, ring crew, even back then. And we started doing more shows. And eventually, a few years later, Circle City was taking off really well. And like WCW does now, they would do shows every Thursday night. And I remember a lot of times the place was packed. I mean, it's just like during like the fall and winter. And we started being more and more involved. I started traveling with some shows. And then, so the promotion then went from probably, I would say maybe 94 to about 97. 97, of course, I graduated high school. And then me and Dad started going even more shows. There was some other promotions here as well. And I started going to shows. And then about 98, we were at a ECW show at Tyndall Armory. And that was the first time we had seen one of those shows live, because we'd had, like before that, for Circle City, we had like Sabu, Rob Van Dam. This is back when the ECW was still getting momentum. And it was about 98 when I started training. And I remember Dad and I, we got trained. I was trained down at the old gym in Greenwood, and go to classes there like maybe a couple times a week. And then after that started happening, Dad started getting more involved. Like he would be, like kind of like a general manager, commissioner here and there for promotions, and then also announced a few times. And then he would also start managing. That's about the time he started managing. And we would go shows like down south, mainly North Vernon, Columbus. And I remember one of the first shows we did was in North Vernon for Roger Blade, of course. And about 2 or 3 years later, maybe about 99, 2000, is when we started getting more training. Like he started going and getting more training from Jimmy Kikillia, Jimmy Reynolds, one half of the Bravehearts. And we worked with several people at that point. Of course, the late Kelly Tabor, the Diva, Apollo Star, and several others. And it just, we just doing it from there. And we started doing all these shows like on weekends, some Fridays, some Saturdays, even some Sundays. And being involved with that, we got to know so many people and going to different shows here and there. And of course, there would be some shows where, like local shows where, and that's where we got starting involved with what was called Circle City Wrestling 2000. That was something that we brought about again. Ran for about maybe 2.5 years. And then, of course, after a while, we just started having more shows and more shows, so it was getting harder for us to run them here. And that was where we did, like, some more shows down south, for Jerry Wilson, shows up north. It just got, so many good shows we did, like Blizzard Jr., Bobo Brazil Jr., and others. And we even went over to Ohio, to Cambridge, Ohio. Probably maybe about a 3-hour drive from here because it's on the other side of Cincinnati. And we did just shows there, like maybe like one Friday, one Saturday. Sometimes we would come back after the Saturday night show. Of course, later on, we ended up staying over there because it just got to be too much driving back and forth after a second night. And we just been involved with that and there. And of course, Dad and I, would do like shows together. We ride together, all that. And I remember one time we were doing a show in North Vernon, and he doesn't remember the drive home, but I do. It was night where it was one of Roger Blaze shows and had a good crowd. And of course, during one of the matches, it was he was on the ring apron, he was managing. He got knocked off the ring apron, about maybe the second or third row of chairs. Fractured his tailbone. He didn't realize he did it at first, but he thankfully enough, it healed up though. So, but I remember, shows we'd done up north, like Lafayette, Fort Wayne, a couple shows up in Burnettsville, which is up past Kokomo. And he wrestled up there. I, of course, wrestled and refereed up there. And, we just enjoyed it so much. And then I remember, all the people we've known over the years, guys from down at OVW, that before OVW was developmental, back when it was just OVW, like Mike Sables, Vic the Bruiser, Victor Lewis, Flash, all those guys we still know today. And it was probably about 2016, I think, when the late Rob Kincaid asked Dad and I, said, what would you guys think if Circle City started up again? I would help you guys run it, put in the money. And we said, okay, hell yeah, let's do it. And so we started out German Park. First show was a free show because it was outside. But that very first show we did, I'm like, man, and we probably did almost 600 people at that first show. And then the second show was outside because it was still nice. And then we decided, well, this is going good. So we moved into a Turner building down there. And every show we did was a top-notch show. We had, you can believe how many people we had. And we had Animal, we had, Kennedy, Too Cool before Brian Christopher passed away. But it was just overall, throughout the years we've been doing this, he and I together have been doing this. Well, I'm still in it, but we've been doing this almost 30 years. 25 years total. I know there was a time where he kind of got it for a while because I remember he had about maybe somewhere between 2005 and 10. And of course, he had hernia surgery, but thankfully he recovered from that. But after that, he continued because he was diagnosed with testicular cancer around 2014, I think. We didn't know that's what it was at first. We thought maybe, he'd just been sick. And because what happened was, he had lost weight because he wanted to, get his weight down and everything. He had been stopped eating so much fast food and all that and started drinking this water and everything. So his weight, well, he put some of it back on and I realized that he was starting to lose some weight again, which is why. Well, come to find out, he had that type of cancer, and he went to Wisher, which was at the time, and it turned out what it was. And they said there are things he could do. Well, turned out he went through chemo. And a lot of people don't realize this, but the same doctor he had also treated Lance Armstrong.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, the exact same doctor that treated him. And he got recovered from that. Of course, he lost a kidney and a testicle, but he recovered and got through all that. And he was okay. He had been cancer-free since that time. But after that, everything was going good. We were doing more shows. And, like I said, when Circle City came back and started up again, it was just a great thing. And sadly, we lost Rob back in 2018. And the next couple of years were good, but around that we were, still doing shows here and there, down south, a couple up north here, and some here too. And it was probably around 2021, I think, or maybe 2022, where he had an accident. It was actually right here by where we lived, and a car hit him head on. Well, of course, we weren't sure what severe damage was. Of course, he had a broken finger, but we're not sure if he had hit his head during the accident. We weren't sure, but like last year, the year before last, actually, he kind of started like getting a little bit confused and everything. We thought maybe that was causing the accident, because I know sometimes that things like that happen, and we come to find out this last year that he had to have surgery to relieve a subdural hematoma in his brain. And we thought maybe that could have been partly what caused the problems, because there's all kinds of things he had from car accidents and all that. But not more than a few months ago, we found out that turns out it was dementia. We didn't know it at first, but it was maybe right near the end of October. We found out that's what it was. And we know there's all kinds of things and problems that can happen from that too, health problems and all that. Well, we had him in the hospital, and because after his hematoma surgery, he seemed like he was doing okay. But after that, it just kind of went down from there. And then we had him, took him to one of the hospitals, and he got a touch of the flu. He recovered okay from that because they made antibiotics and all that. But then more than about a couple of weeks later, he developed a case of pneumonia. But surely they gave him, medicine for that, and he recovered. But after that, it was just like, they're not sure if part of that could have been from the illness or what. But after around end of November, beginning of December, is kind of like when we had him in an assisted living home, and he lasted the whole month of December. And New Year's, matter of fact, it was Sunday, New Year's morning, is when my mom got the call, and we found out that he had passed away. But I'll tell you this, on aside from being in the business as long as we both have been, I was glad that I've gotten to do it with him. I was glad that we both got involved at the same time. Also, not only that, but I'm glad that we also got to actually tag together a couple times. We did a couple of shows again, so we tagged together. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But I know there's a lot of people that we've known, that we train with, I train with, that, they're going to miss him. We're all going to miss him. I know that I'm trying to, hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm trying to get a few people to help me maybe do a memorial/tribute show.
Yeah.
I would like to see if I can maybe do like over a week, make one maybe one on a Saturday and one on a Sunday. That way I can have enough people for both shows. But I think now every time I go into a ring, it doesn't matter where it is. It can be WWO, it can be down for Emerge or whatever. But I know every time I step in the ring, I'm going to probably get in the ring and maybe even give a little pat to the apron, because, he and I have always been wrestling fans since I was a kid, maybe when he was a kid. But I was just glad to have had him as a father, I guess a friend, partner. And we were partners when we ran the shows too, because when him and Rob would do Circle City again, he would kind of help be upstairs, help in the locker room, and Rob kind of be back and forth. And I would kind of be out on the floor mainly, because I was keeping an eye on everybody and all that. So kind of like a not security, more like a oversee everything out there. But I'll tell you, I know that everybody's had so many people who can hopefully share their thoughts and their memories of him. But I'm definitely going to keep everybody updated on when we're going to have the service. Of course, he is getting cremated because he's going to be doing they do research, like somebody donates their body for medical research, so they're doing that. So we'll find out when we're going to get his ashes. But I will definitely keep everybody updated on when the service is going to be. I'm thinking maybe when it gets a little bit warmer, so that we can have so many people come. Maybe end of February, maybe sometime in March. So we'll find out.
Yeah,
we just got to find a venue to do it in.
Yeah,
but
I've always said that.
Like I said, it's it's been a little hard, but we're getting through it and everything. But I just want to say, everybody out there, people who see this, I would say thank you so much for having known him. for all those people who knew him as JT or Uncle Steve or Jay or whoever, but a lot of you know him as Steve, and I know him as Dad. So I know that I'm always going to carry a piece of him with me, no matter where I go, especially now.
Yeah. I've always said that, I don't, like you said, 25, 30 years, it seemed like any show you went to, Steve was there, whether he was working, whether he's helping, whether as a fan, he was always there. And you'd run into him everywhere. And man, it's just like, it's hard to even imagine Indiana wrestling without Steve Branam around.
Yeah.
And
true.
And it's like, I mean, I've worked with him. I ran some shows in North Vernon, and when I started running those shows, I knew I wanted Steve on there, and I had him as a manager, doing the Hill manager. He was one of the guys I knew I wanted there because he was such a good guy, and I knew he'd be easy to work with. And it's just, man, he was such a good guy. But yeah, like I said, I mean, my heart aches for you guys because, like, we all knew him. Anybody in wrestling knew him as a friend, but it's different. I mean, not only was your father, but you spent so much time with him, like you said. So it was different. I mean, it was different than what we most of us know with our dads. No matter how close, you spent so much time on the road and with him. I can only imagine how that next level that was. But I do want to thank you, Matt, for sharing your dad with us all these years. I mean, he was close to a lot of us, and you were a son, but you shared his time and his passion and everything. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk about him. Like I said, I know it's still fresh, so it can't be easy. Before we go, like you said, there's been so many people online that have just talked about Steve so much. What do you think he would think of all this and people sharing stories and sending love? What do you think Steve's reaction would be if he saw that?
Well, I think he would love it. I think he'd appreciate it because there were so many people that he knew in and out of this business. I mean, a lot of people we knew professionally and personally. I think that people really appreciated what he did and what he brought to not just the business, but to them as well. Because, we would always talk about certain things. Like, I mean, I know times when we would, travel with like Cameron Star, her husband, or Rob, whatever, we would share things. We'd share things about, life and what we want to do. Talk about the business, of course. We talk about other things as well. But I think that he would truly appreciate all of the people that he knew, all the people that knew him, and all of the years that he had been doing wrestling, all the years that he'd been doing, also the management he's done, the announcing, commissioner, whatever. But I just think that I know that he'd appreciate everything everybody done for him and with him. We did. I mean, we appreciated every single promotion or every single person we've met over the years. It's just been, phenomenal.
Yeah.
And, I know there's tons of people out there, tons of promotions, tons of organizations, but no matter what, those that came on that road with us, will always know what he meant to wrestling and what he meant to the business and just what he meant in general to everybody.
Yeah. And like I said, I wanted to do something to just tip our hat and let you and your family know how much he meant to us. And I hope Steve knew when he was alive. I hope people told him, and I hope he knew while he was still with us how much people appreciated him. And I hope people told him, and I hope he felt that love before. So.
Oh yeah, I know he did.
Good. Well, again, Matt, thank you. Like I said, I'm not going to keep you long. I know this is a crazy time for you and a busy and an emotional time, but I do appreciate you giving me a little bit of time and participating in this. And like I said, I hope we do your dad right and showing him a little love.